3 True McDonald's Horror Stories, Animated Story 1. The Drive-thru. My name is Curtis, and I was 22 years old when this happened. I was working the overnight shift at a McDonald's off Interstate 40 in rural Oklahoma, about 30 miles outside of Oklahoma City. It was a Friday night around 2:25 a.m. when a car pulled up to the drive-thru speaker, and the driver did not order anything. He just sat there, engine running, saying nothing for almost 3 minutes. When I looked at the security monitor to see what was going on, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The car was empty. There was no driver. Before I continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. Because what happened over the next hour is something I still cannot explain. That McDonald's was one of those 24-hour locations that served highway travelers, truckers, and anyone desperate enough to need fast food in the middle of the night. It was an older building, kind of run down, with a small dining room that we closed at 11 p.m. and a drive-thru that stayed open all night. The location was isolated, surrounded by flat Oklahoma farmland with nothing but darkness in every direction once you got past the parking lot lights. I had been working overnights there for about 6 months. The pay was not great, but I was saving money for community college, and the night differential helped. Most shifts were quiet. We would get a steady trickle of customers until about 1 a.m. Then, it would slow down to maybe 1 or 2 cars an hour until the morning rush started, around 5:30. That night, I was working with 2 other people. Maria, a woman in her 40s, who handled the grill, and a kid named Deshaun, who was 18, and worked the front counter and helped with orders. The 3 of us had worked together plenty of times. We had a good rhythm. Around 2 a.m., the last customer had come through about 20 minutes earlier, and we were cleaning up restocking supplies, doing the usual overnight tasks. That is when the drive-thru sensor beeped, indicating a car had pulled up to the speaker. I put on my headset and gave the standard greeting. "Welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you tonight?" Nothing. No response, just silence on the other end. I repeated the greeting. Still nothing. I could hear the faint sound of an engine idling through the speaker, so I knew the car was still there. I looked at the security monitor that showed the drive-thru camera feed. That is when I saw it. The car was a dark sedan, older model, sitting at the speaker box with its headlights on. But the driver's seat was empty. I could see clearly through the windshield. There was no one behind the wheel. No one in the passenger seat either. The car was just sitting there running with no one inside. I called Maria over and showed her the monitor. She squinted at the screen, confused. She asked if maybe the driver was slumped down or in the back seat. I looked closer. The car had tinted windows, but the front windshield was clear. I could see the steering wheel, the dashboard, the empty seats. No one. I told Deshaun to go to the window and see if he could get a better look. He walked over to the drive-thru window and peered out into the darkness. He came back shaking his head. He said the car was definitely there, engine running, but he could not see anyone inside either. We waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The car did not move. No one got out. No one spoke through the speaker. At the 3-minute mark, I decided to make another announcement through the speaker. I said if you are not going to order, please pull forward so we can serve other customers. There were no other customers, but I did not know what else to say. The car started moving, but not forward. It started rolling backward slowly away from the speaker. It rolled about 20 feet, then stopped. Then it started moving forward again, back toward the speaker. It did this 3 times. Forward, backward, like someone was playing with us. Maria told me to call the police. She said something was seriously wrong with this situation. I agreed. I grabbed the store phone and dialed 911. I explained what was happening, gave them our location, told them there was a suspicious vehicle in our drive-thru that appeared to be unmanned. The dispatcher said she would send a unit, but it might take 15 to 20 minutes because we were so far from town. While I was on the phone, the car stopped moving. It sat at the speaker for another 30 seconds, then slowly rolled forward toward the pickup window. Deshawn backed away from the window, looking scared. Maria came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. The car stopped at the window. The 3 of us stood there, staring at it through the glass. The driver's side window was down, but I couldn't see anyone inside from my angle. The interior was dark. Then a hand appeared, a pale hand reaching out of the darkness inside the car, extending toward the pickup window. It was holding something, a crumpled piece of paper. Deshawn screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of cups. Maria grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. I just stood there, frozen, watching that hand hover in the air outside our window. The hand opened and let the paper drop. It fell to the ground outside the window. Then the hand retreated back into the car. The car sat there for another 5 seconds. Then it slowly pulled away, drove around the building and headed toward the highway. We watched its taillights disappear into the darkness. None of us moved for a long moment. Then Maria said, someone needed to get that paper. I said I was not going out there. Deshawn said he was not going out there either. Maria looked at both of us sighed and walked toward the side door that led outside. I told her to wait, that the police were coming, but she was already out the door. I watched through the drive-thru window as she walked to the spot where the paper had fallen. She picked it up, looked at it, and her face went white. She came back inside and handed me the paper without saying a word. I unfolded it. It was a photograph of the 3 of us taken through the drive-thru window from the outside. It showed Maria at the grill, Deshawn at the counter, and me standing at the register. It had been taken earlier that night. The timestamp in the corner said 1:17 a.m. Someone had been outside our window watching us taking pictures for over an hour before they pulled up to the speaker, and we had no idea. The police arrived about 25 minutes later. They searched the area, drove up and down the highway, but found nothing. No car matching the description, no suspicious individuals, nothing. They took the photograph as evidence and said they would investigate. We finished our shift in near silence. None of us wanted to talk about what had happened. When the morning crew arrived at 5:30, we clocked out and left. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, watching the sun come up, trying to process what I had experienced. I worked at that McDonald'S for another 3 weeks before I quit. Every overnight shift, I would stare at the drive-thru monitor, waiting for that car to come back. Every time a customer took too long at the speaker, my heart would race. I could not do it anymore. The police never identified the car or the person driving it. The photograph was never traced. We never found out who had been watching us, or why, or what they wanted. But here is the thing that still haunts me. About 2 months after I quit, I heard from Deshawn that something else had happened at that McDonald's. Another overnight shift, another car at the drive-thru, another piece of paper dropped at the window. This time, it was a photograph of the new crew taken from the same angle, the same time of night. Whoever it was, they were still watching, still coming back, still playing whatever sick game they were playing. And as far as I know, they never got caught. I do not eat at McDonald's anymore. I do not drive through fast food restaurants late at night. And whenever I see a car with tinted windows sitting somewhere it should not be, I get as far away from it as possible. Because I know now that the darkness outside those windows can hide anything. And sometimes the person hiding in that darkness is watching you right back. Story 2. The Bathroom. My name is Franklin, and I was 28 years old when this happened. I was driving home from a business trip somewhere along Interstate 10 in West Texas when I stopped at a McDonald's to use the restroom and grab some coffee. It was around 9:15 p.m. on a Monday night, and the restaurant was almost empty. Just a couple of truckers at one table and a teenager behind the counter. What happened in that bathroom is the reason I never use public restrooms alone anymore. If you are new to this channel, hit subscribe and leave a comment with your location. Because this story might make you think twice about stopping at the next rest stop. I had been driving for about 6 hours, and I was exhausted. The stretch of I-10 between El Paso and San Antonio is brutal. Nothing but flat, empty desert for miles, occasional gas stations and fast food places clustered around exits, and not much else. The sun had set about an hour earlier, and I was starting to feel the fatigue setting in. I decided to stop at the next exit, get some coffee, stretch my legs, and use the restroom before pushing on. The McDonald's was part of a travel plaza that also had a gas station and a convenience store. It was one of those places that clearly served highway travelers, with a big parking lot full of semi-trucks and a tired-looking building that had seen better days. I parked near the entrance, went inside, and headed straight for the restroom. The men's room was at the back of the restaurant, down a short hallway past the kitchen area. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Standard fast food bathroom, 2 urinals, 2 stalls, 2 sinks, fluorescent lights that buzzed and flickered slightly. The floor was wet in places, either from recent mopping or poor aim. It smelled like industrial cleaner, and something else underneath that I did not want to identify. I walked to the urinal and did my business. As I was finishing up, I heard the bathroom door open behind me. Footsteps. Someone walked in and went into one of the stalls. Normal enough. I zipped up and went to the sink to wash my hands. I was rinsing the soap off when I noticed something in the mirror. The stall door behind me, the one that had just closed, had a gap at the bottom. Standard bathroom design. But through that gap, I could see the person's feet, and they were facing the wrong direction. Instead of facing the toilet, they were facing the door, facing me. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the guy was adjusting his clothes before sitting down. Maybe he was checking his phone. People do weird things in bathrooms. I grabbed some paper towels, dried my hands, and headed for the exit. I was reaching for the door handle when I heard the stall door creak open behind me. I glanced back reflexively. The man was standing in the stall doorway staring at me. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with a gaunt face and deep-set eyes. He was wearing a dirty jacket and jeans that looked like they had not been washed in weeks. His hands were at his sides, fingers slightly curled. He was not moving, just staring. Something about the way he looked at me triggered every alarm in my body. I pushed through the door and walked quickly back toward the dining area. I did not run because I did not want to seem paranoid, but I was moving as fast as I could without breaking into a sprint. I got to the counter and ordered a large coffee. The teenager working the register looked bored, barely glancing at me as she rang up the order. While I waited, I kept looking toward the hallway that led to the bathroom. The man had not come out yet. My coffee came. I paid, grabbed it, and headed for the exit. I was almost to the door when I saw him. He was standing at the end of the hallway watching me. He had not come through the dining area. He must have used some other route, maybe a back door or service entrance to get there. But there he was at the far end of the restaurant, staring at me with those deep-set eyes. I pushed through the exit and jogged to my car. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, finally got the door unlocked and threw myself inside. I started the engine and looked toward the restaurant entrance. He was outside now, standing on the sidewalk in front of the McDonald's, watching my car. His hands were still at his sides, fingers still curled. He had not moved to follow me. He was just watching. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the space. As I shifted to drive, he started walking toward me, slowly at first, then faster. Not quite running, but definitely more than a casual walk. I floored it. The car shot forward across the parking lot. I made it to the exit and pulled onto the access road that led back to the highway. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw him standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching my car disappear. For the next 30 miles, I kept checking my mirrors, convinced I would see headlights following me. But there was nothing, just the empty highway and the darkness. I pulled off at the next exit that had a well-lit gas station with plenty of people around. I parked under the brightest lights I could find and sat there for about 15 minutes trying to calm down. My hands were still shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I called my wife and told her what had happened. She wanted me to call the police, but I said, what would I even tell them? A guy looked at me weird in a bathroom and then watched me leave. It was not illegal to be creepy. There was no crime to report. I finished the drive home without stopping again. Made it in one go, running on coffee and adrenaline. When I pulled into my driveway around 2 a.m., I sat in the car for 5 minutes before going inside, just looking around, making sure no one had followed me. A few days later, I decided to look up that McDonald's online. I do not know what I was expecting to find. Maybe reviews from other people who had strange experiences there. Maybe news stories about incidents at that location. What I found was worse. There was a news article from about 8 months earlier. A woman had been attacked in the parking lot of that same McDonald's. She had stopped to use the restroom just like me, and when she came out, a man was waiting for her near her car. He had assaulted her and tried to drag her toward a van parked nearby. She managed to fight him off and escape, but he was never caught. The description of the attacker matched the man I had seen in the bathroom. Tall, gaunt, deep-set eyes, dirty clothes. I do not know for certain that it was the same person. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe there are multiple creepy men who hang around that McDonald's at night. But the description was too close. The behavior was too similar. Standing in the bathroom watching, waiting outside by the cars. I think about what would have happened if I had not noticed his feet facing the wrong way in that stall. If I had taken my time at the sink instead of hurrying out. If I had not been paying attention when I saw him at the end of the hallway. Would he have followed me to my car? Would he have been waiting for me in the parking lot? I reported what I saw to the police in that county. They said they would look into it, that they appreciated the information. I never heard anything back. For all I know, that man is still there, still hanging around, that McDonald's still watching people who stop to use the restroom late at night. I do not stop at rest stops after dark anymore. If I need to use the bathroom, I wait until I find a well-lit place with plenty of people around. And even then, I check the stalls before I go in. I look at the gaps under the doors. I watch which way people's feet are pointing. Because sometimes the most ordinary places hide the most dangerous people, and sometimes the only thing that saves you is noticing something that doesn't quite look right. Story 3. The Night Manager. My name is Wesley, and I was 33 years old when this happened. I was the night manager at a McDonald's in a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was a Thursday night in late January, around 11:45 p.m., and we were about 15 minutes from closing when a man walked in and asked if we were hiring. There was nothing unusual about the question. People ask about jobs all the time. But something about the way he looked at my employees, the way his eyes moved from face to face like he was memorizing them, made me immediately uneasy. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because what unfolded over the next few weeks is one of the most disturbing experiences of my career. The McDonald's I managed was in a decent area, a suburban strip mall with good traffic during the day and reasonable business at night. We closed the dining room at midnight and the drive-thru at 1 a.m. on weeknights. The crew I had that night was solid, 4 employees plus me, 2 on the line, 1 at the register 1 handling drive-thru. All of them people I knew and trusted. The man who walked in that night was probably late 30s medium build, wearing a heavy winter coat and a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He came up to the counter and asked if we were hiring. I told him we were always accepting applications and pointed to the stack of paper applications we kept near the registers, explaining he could also apply online. He picked up an application and looked at it for a moment. Then he looked up past me at the employees working behind the counter. His eyes moved slowly from person to person, settling on each face for several seconds, before moving to the next. It was not a casual glance. It was deliberate, focused, almost predatory. I stepped into his line of sight, blocking his view of my employees. I asked if there was anything else I could help him with. He looked at me for a long moment, that same intense stare, then smiled and said no. He had everything he needed. He folded the application, put it in his pocket, and walked out. I watched him through the windows as he crossed the parking lot. He got into a dark pickup truck parked at the far end of the lot, sat there for a few minutes, then drove away. I made a mental note of the truck, but did not think much more about it at the time. The next night around the same time he came back. Same coat, same cap. He ordered a coffee paid with cash and sat at a table near the windows, where he could see the entire dining room and the counter area. He sat there for almost 45 minutes, sipping his coffee, watching my employees work. One of my crew members, a 19-year-old girl named Alicia, came up to me and said the guy was creeping her out. She said he kept staring at her, would not look away when she caught him looking. I told her to stay behind the counter and avoid going out to the dining room. Then I walked over to the man's table. I asked if everything was okay with his order. He said yes, everything was fine. I asked if he was waiting for someone. He said no, he just liked the atmosphere. I told him we would be closing the dining room soon and he would need to finish up. He looked at his watch, looked at me, and smiled that same unsettling smile. He said he understood. He left a few minutes later. As he walked out, he looked back over his shoulder at the counter. At Alicia. Then he was gone. I started keeping a log after that. Every time he came in, I wrote down the date time, what he ordered, how long he stayed, and what he did. Over the next 2 weeks, he came in 8 more times, always around the same time, between 11 and midnight. Always ordered the same thing, a small coffee. Always sat at the same table. Always watched my employees, especially the women. I reported it to the franchise owner and to the local police. The franchise owner said there was not much we could do unless he actually did something threatening. The police said the same thing. Sitting in a restaurant and drinking coffee was not a crime. Looking at people was not a crime. Unless he made explicit threats or engaged in illegal behavior, their hands were tied. But I knew something was wrong. I could feel it. The way he looked at my employees was not normal. There was hunger in those looks, not for food. I started changing the schedules, making sure the female employees did not work the late shift alone, making sure there were always at least 2 people leaving the building together at closing time. I walked everyone to their cars. I installed a cheap security camera in the back hallway, near the employee entrance, one that was not part of the official system, but that recorded to my personal phone. About 3 weeks after his first visit, he stopped coming. Just like that. One night, he was there sitting at his usual table, and then the next night, he was not. A week went by. Then 2. No sign of him. I thought maybe he had moved on, found another restaurant to haunt. Maybe he'd gotten whatever he wanted just from watching. I started to relax a little. Then Alicia did not show up for her shift. She was scheduled to work on a Saturday afternoon noon to 8. When she didn't arrive by 12:15, I called her phone. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. I called her emergency contact, her mother, who said Alicia had left for work that morning around 11:30. She should have been there by now. I called the police. Alicia's mother called the police. Her car was found in the parking lot of a grocery store about 2 miles from the Mcdonald'S. The driver's side door was open. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her phone was on the ground outside the car. She was gone. The next 48 hours were a blur of police interviews, search parties, and desperate phone calls. The whole community came together to look for her. Her picture was on the news, on social media, on flyers posted everywhere. I gave the police my log. Every entry I had made about the man in the baseball cap. Every visit, every observation. I gave them the footage from my personal camera, which showed him leaving through the back parking lot on 3 separate occasions, always around closing time, always walking the same direction. Based on that footage and my log, the police identified him. His name was Gerald Owens, 41 years old, living in a house about 4 miles from the McDonald's. He had a record. Assault charges 10 years ago dismissed. A restraining order from a former girlfriend. And most disturbingly, he'd been questioned in connection with 2 other disappearances in neighboring states over the past 5 years. Never charged, never convicted, but questioned. They found Alicia on the 3rd day. She was in Gerald Owen's basement. She was alive. I do not know all the details of what happened to her in those 3 days. The police did not share that with me, and I did not ask. What I know is that she survived. She was rescued. Gerald Owens was arrested and charged with kidnapping assault, and a list of other offences that would keep him in prison for a very long time. The trial lasted about 4 months. I testified about my observations, about the log I kept, about the way he watched my employees. The prosecutor said my documentation was crucial to establishing the pattern of behaviour that led to Owens being identified so quickly. Without it, they might not have found Alicia in time. Alicia did not come back to work at the McDonald's. I did not expect her to. She and her family moved away about 6 months after the trial, trying to start fresh somewhere new. I heard she was doing okay, all things considered. Going to therapy, taking it one day at a time. I stayed at that McDonald's for another year before transferring to a different location. The memories were too heavy. Every time I looked at that table where he used to sit, every time I walked through the parking lot at closing time, I thought about what almost happened. What could have happened if I had not paid attention? If I had not kept that log? If I had written off my gut feeling as paranoia? I think about all the restaurants, all the stores, all the public places where someone like Gerald Owens might be sitting right now, watching, taking notes, choosing his next target. Most of the time, people like him blend in. They do not stand out. They do not cause a scene. They just watch and wait. That is what makes them so dangerous. By the time you realize something is wrong, it might already be too late. If you work in retail, in food service, in any job where you interact with the public, pay attention to the regulars. Pay attention to the ones who watch too much and say too little. Pay attention to your instincts when they tell you something is off. And if you see something, document it. Write it down. Dates, times, descriptions. Because that information might be the thing that saves someone's life. Alicia is alive because I trusted my gut. She is alive because I wrote things down. She's alive because when the police needed information, I had it ready. Not everyone is that lucky. Not every story ends with a rescue on the 3rd day. But maybe, if we pay more attention, if we trust ourselves when something feels wrong, we can change the odds. Stay safe out there. And always, always trust your instincts. Those were 3 true McDonald's horror stories. These are places we visit every day without thinking twice. We grab a burger, use the restroom stop, for coffee, on a long drive. We do not expect danger. We do not expect to encounter people who mean us harm. But as these stories show, the most ordinary places can become hunting grounds for the most dangerous people. The drive-thru window at 2 a.m., the bathroom at a rest stop, the dining room of your local franchise. These are places where predators watch and wait, looking for opportunities, looking for victims. Be aware of your surroundings. Trust your instincts. Look out for each other, because sometimes the thing that saves you is nothing more than noticing that something does not feel right. And sometimes that feeling is the only warning you get.